closely connected with provincial governments, like state governments here, and those provincial governors are even not connected with a district level or village level governments or source of governance. And so the process right now in Afghanistan is how to strengthen the central government on the one hand and the provincial governments on the other, and then connect them, the two together, and then as well as with the district and village level. This is, of course, a long-term process that we need to start as soon as possible, because most of the Afghan population live in rural areas. And the districts and villages, and that's where we need to be present and need to be providing basic services to people. As I pointed out, to the extent that we have not been able to do so, particularly in the south and east, the Taliban have been able to fill that vacuum and be present and provide incentives such as recruiting jobless youth to join their ranks and fight the government, or to provide protection for opium poppy cultivation or drug production and smuggling. So those are the kinds of incentives that at least the Taliban offer to people. If you were living there and you had a large family which you needed to support, and the only source of livelihood was opium poppy cultivation, the government was absent and didn't have the resources to protect and help you, of course, out of mere concern for your safety and survival of your family, then you would probably join the Taliban or at least remain passive. So we hope that from this point on, we definitely gave more attention and resources to strengthening state institutions, not only in the center but also on the local level. And there are now several strategic reviews of how to secure Afghanistan are going on, and this part of social outreach and strengthening local governance is at the heart of these strategies that need to be addressed.
John Hone, International Relations. Question I have is, one of my friends, he actually served in Afghanistan, and he said that he was with the Corps of Engineers, and he said that while he was there, one of the biggest problems that he ran into were people who hadn't had what we would probably consider necessities, just running water, electricity, stuff like that. And he said that they didn't have it, and they didn't really understand what it was, and they didn't really want them there because they didn't understand that. Is that...
Yeah, it's a fair assessment of the situation. People don't have the basic necessities. We have some 5 million refugees who have come back from Pakistan and Iran, hoping, of course, that their lives would change. At least in Pakistan and Iran, that electricity, maybe not a full day, but at least 10, 15 hours. We have some 3 hours of electricity in Kabul, let alone provincial centers and villages and districts, no electricity, maybe not even an hour. And the electricity that they do get I think, from 10 o'clock at night, and it blacks out at midnight or even later. So at a time when people are asleep. And so running water is a problem from beginning, and especially over the past 2.5 decades, that irrigation systems were destroyed, canals were destroyed, and not many of these have been rebuilt, especially in the south and east. So the very basics are not in place in much of Afghanistan, unfortunately. And also we need to realize that Afghanistan was the least developed country even before these conflicts started, before the Soviet invasion. And then years of conflict that destroyed much of what we had built through the subsidies we got from the Soviets. And so right now what we are doing in Afghanistan is building everything from ground up, not rebuilding. There is not much to be rebuilt, but there is so much that needs to be built from ground up. And so resources, you look at how much we have been given and how we have been given. Much of the resources have been given to donor-related NGOs and contractors. If you look at the contracting business of the donor community, you will see that there are multiple layers of contracting. Each layer of contracting basically skims 30% of the donated money that is given in the names of the Afghan people. And when Afghans hear that billions of dollars have been given to Afghanistan, but they don't know how that's given and how it's spent, and now 7 years on, when they see that not much has happened and not much has changed in their lives, they begin questioning, where is this money going? And then they, come up with all sorts of conspiracy theories. Are we part of the solution in Afghanistan or part of the problem? And so that's why it's so important to really get Afghanistan back on the track. And it's important to note that, of course, as much as we achieved those milestones in Afghanistan, we were also diverted from getting the job done in Afghanistan by the events in Iraq, which sapped resources and attention for the past 4 or 5 years. And so the need for recommitting and refocusing on Afghanistan, which the new administration, President-elect Obama, is very committed to, and the Afghan government or people are looking forward to partnering with the new administration to basically consolidate our achievements and to win the peace in Afghanistan that is good for us and the United States and the world.
Dallin Shaner, International Relations. At this point in the war on terror, is the civilian support for the Taliban increasing or decreasing? And also, what populations do the Taliban draw, or ethnic populations or groups of people do the Taliban draw their support from?
Well, support for the Taliban is not active. If it is passive, and I discussed the reason why. The reason why people might passively support the Taliban is because of our absence and our weakness, particularly in some 60 plus districts where the Afghan government is not very much present and lacks the resources to provide effective basic services, law and order and security. And so as we've filled the gap, then of course people will come back on our side. Still, more than 70% of the Afghan people support overwhelmingly international presence in Afghanistan and their international and their forces in Afghanistan, because as I pointed out, the Taliban are no alternative. Their comeback. Their comeback is there because people cannot do anything. If you live in the south and east of Afghanistan, you're threatened. You could be killed. Your family could be, targeted at any time. So you just keep quiet to survive and be safe. But that doesn't mean that you support the Taliban. Of course, once the Taliban is effectively there and your human security is ensured, about the safety of your family tomorrow and the day after and the following week and the next month, you would definitely be on the side of the government. Of course, freedom, democracy, those are all great promises and offer so much potentially. But we need to provide the resources to create institutions to maintain democracy and to deliver on the promise of democracy. And our democracy here in the United States just didn't happen. It took you time, it took you efforts, it took you leadership to develop the kind of democracy we are in today. And so we shouldn't take it for granted here, of course, but of course neither should we falter on supporting the democratization process in Afghanistan and our region, in Pakistan, of course, civilianizing the government and strengthening, deepening democratization process, so that when, of course, we know from theories of democratic peace that democracies don't fight each other. And so that's the hope, that if Pakistan is democratic and we are democratic and our other neighbors are democratic, that we will focus on economic prosperity and development and regional economic integration, like post-World War Europe. And so